It was weird. It was like it took me back a little bit. I was just like, oh, God.
What, your boner?
Yeah, my boner. When it hit me in the face because I have a huge dick.
All right, off the rails.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. How has been the 12 hours since I last saw you?
Haven't really done a whole lot. I slept and saw a movie and then saw you again.
Yeah.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time together yesterday.
Yeah, so Shocktober in Irvington was yesterday, and Tyler and I went and drove up to Indy and back in the same night, which was awful. That trip was doomed.
Yeah,
it was really bad. But Shocktober was a lot of fun. I'm proud of the guys over the Obsessive Viewer for putting that on for the second year in a row, and it was a success. I thought it was great. The shorts were all great from JP Leck. Billy and Brandon watch movies, and I forgot the other guy's name. The one that I actually liked the most, I forgot his name. What's Eating Dad? There's a zombie short. It was really funny and great. I mean, they were all great, but that was the one that I definitely liked the best. I mean, it was just kind of a cool event. The Irving was kind of creepy. I mean, it's kind of a rundown old theater, and it really felt like it worked for an event like that. I couldn't see myself going to like a Christmas movie festival or anything there because it would feel kind of weird. But for definitely a horror film festival, it definitely fit that theme really well.
Oh, for sure. It was a very scary experience for me, especially when using the restroom at the Irving.
Yeah, that restroom was weird because it had a urinal and a stall, but the stall didn't have an actual, like it wasn't an actual stall. It didn't give you any privacy from the urinal. So you could just be dropping a deuce and a guy peeing right next to you. Yeah. Super weird. It was prison rules.
Yeah. So it's like a bathroom for one, but there's no lock on the door.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pissing at the urinal. Some guy walks in and immediately walks out. It's like, I don't blame you, man. Just give me a sec.
Yeah. At least you weren't dumping.
There's no way that could have happened for me.
No.
If the need would have had to arise, I'd be out in like the parking lot or something.
Yeah. See, that's because you're a normal person. When I went to the bathroom in that bathroom, I was just like, you know what? I have to pee. Instead of using the urinal, I'm going to use the sit down one and just see what happens, man.
Did you sit down when you peed?
No, I was just standing up. I was just going for it, man. Like I was at home. It would have been super awkward if somebody came in, but yeah. It is what it is, man.
But anyways, Shocktober, a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We're already looking forward to doing it next year and maybe doing something for it.
Why would you say that? We briefly mentioned something on the car ride home yesterday, and that was like a commitment.
Because I want to do it, and I feel like if we put it out there, then it'll force us to do something.
Yeah, cool.
All right. So we may or may not be doing that. Probably not. We will probably back up, but it was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. The car ride, not so much. That was awful, especially the way back getting blocked in the one lane highway, getting blocked by the police for like 15, 20 minutes. That was not great. But other than that, it was a lot of fun and we look forward to it. Maybe staying the night next year because that ride back was pretty brutal, but
the ride there was brutal. Like it shouldn't be that hard to get from Evansville to Indianapolis is what we went through last night.
Yeah, it was awful. The whole thing was bad. Except for the actual event.
The event was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely put on a really good show, and I'm glad that we went, and I'm looking forward to next year.
For sure.
All right, so if this is your first episode, we start each episode by checking in with each other, and we call it what we're into. So, Tyler, what are you into this week?
I went and saw Sleeping with Other People last Sunday.
All right, cool.
I was really looking forward to this. I'd actually heard about it We're speaking of the Obsessive Viewer and their Shocktober in Irvington. It was on my radar because Matt from the Obsessive Viewer had reviewed it from a film festival he went to earlier this year, I believe.
Indie Film Fest.
Yeah, and I thought that it sounded pretty interesting, and I had seen a couple trailers for it, so it was definitely high up on the list of movies I wanted to see. So I went and saw it, and it was pretty good. I really enjoyed Jason Sudeikis and Alison Brie in it. They had awesome chemistry, and there was definitely some funny moments between the two. It was a little bit more dramatic than I thought it would be, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it was done really well. My only complaint with the film was that it falls apart a little bit in the third act, and then the ending is very rushed.
Okay.
So the third act, not so great, but everything leading up to it was really fun. So I would recommend it for sure. Maybe not going to see it in theaters, but maybe renting it or catching it later on when it's on Netflix. But yeah, it's definitely worth your time.
Yeah. How was the birthday on Molly scene? That looked like it could have been really funny, but I haven't seen the movie yet.
It wasn't like the funniest scene in the movie though. Like, it was cool and that it was funny, a little bit, but then like when they're coming down from Molly, it gets dramatic a little bit again. And
that's a bummer.
Yeah. I don't know. That was a part of the trailer that was the funniest to me as well.
Yeah.
And, I don't remember the actor's name, the guy who plays Rafi on The League.
Oh, yeah.
His friend.
I don't know his name, but yeah.
Yeah. Him and his wife are probably the funniest part of the movie.
Oh, really?
It's their kid's birthday.
Yeah.
When they're going to while they're on ecstasy. And he's really funny. So, yeah, that scene was pretty great.
All right. Cool, man.
All right. What are you into?
I am into what a lot of people are into, which is The Walking Dead season 6. Just premiered last week. By the time this episode drops, obviously, the second episode will have aired as well. But obviously, I don't have a time machine, so I've only seen the first episode. I've had my problems with this show in the past, but I have to give it credit. This season premiere was pretty fucking cool. It was probably one of the cooler episodes of the show as a whole. Not one of the best episodes, but just kind of, they definitely brought the action. It was one of the cooler episodes I've seen in the show in probably a really long time. I loved the black and white, the scenes that were in black and white, which is obviously, I believe, kind of a not so subtle nod to the comic books, because comic books are obviously in black and white as well. And I just thought it was kind of a fun idea, because the black and white scenes where you were seeing the past where they came up with this plan. And so it was kind of a fun way to not only give a nod to the comic books, but also kind of show the viewers that, okay, this is in the past. So it didn't really confuse people. I liked how they showed they kind of went right into it. Like, this show in the past has, one of my problems with the show is the fact that it tends to draw things out a lot. And so I liked how they just really just went for it this first episode. And I actually, when I first saw the opening scene, I was confused, but I was also kind of angry, because I figured it was a flash forward, but it was going to be one of those where they were going to flash forward to like the season finale, this season, season 6 finale. And then they were going to bring you back. And then the season was going to be, each episode was going to be getting you to that point that you saw at the first episode.
Yeah.
And so, because they've been not necessarily known to do that exact thing, but they've been known to kind of draw things out way too long. The second season, they're at the farm the whole fucking time, which was super annoying. I kind of immediately thought that that's what they were doing, but I really appreciated that they just did it in one episode. And it was a really cool episode, and I'm excited for this season. If this is what it's going to be like the entire season, I'm really hoping that it will, because like I said, I've had my problems with the show in the past, but this first episode really kind of gave me hope for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I watched this a couple days after it aired, and everybody had told me how amazing it was. So I think my expectations were a little high, because I did not have the same opinion that you have of it. I don't think it was bad, but it wasn't like amazing to me. It was just another episode. I mean, the flashbacks were cool and all of that, but to me, it was just kind of, we'll see where it goes. I don't know. That was just my opinion on it.
I really liked how everyone had something to do. Like, they all played their part, and some of the newer characters had their role. And I liked how Rick was kind of training them. Like, he's trained the rest of his group to kind of be a little bit tougher because they're definitely very, very doughy. These people have lived behind this wall this entire time. So I appreciated that. And I really liked how everybody had their role in this plan. And I just liked how, like I said, it seemed like in the past they would have drawn this out for at least multiple episodes. So it was kind of cool to see something. You see it for the first time, and then it doesn't necessarily end, but you get to see a lot of things happen in one episode. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air as far as I was concerned, because it seems like this show, that's one of my major problems with it, is that it draws stuff out really long.
Yeah, this was an extended episode, and I found myself looking at the clock periodically through it.
Oh, really?
All right, let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be an extended episode, but I never felt bored during it, which is surprising because there's well, I guess I'll have to wait until the middle episodes because those are generally when I feel kind of bored with this show because, like I said, they draw stuff out.
I don't know. I'm nowhere near being done with The Walking Dead.
No.
But there's a formula to the show that's getting just old and tired. And
for sure.
You got to keep it fresh in the 6th season. And this show, its way of keeping things fresh tends to be like killing off big characters, and that gets old after a while. So I don't know. No big character died in this episode, but I'm sure somebody will bite it eventually in this season. I know there's a couple characters still around that are dead in the comics. So I don't know. It's just very formulaic to me on how it goes. I'm interested to see maybe where they go with the cliffhanger at the end of the season, just to see where this season's really headed. Because honestly, I don't know, this premiere didn't do enough for me for setting up where the season's going. It's all about like this task they're doing and kind of resolving a few things from the last season. And I think the cliffhanger is more going to lead to where things are headed.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see whenever we see the second episode this Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I didn't really think about that. It was a very self-contained episode. I mean, obviously it leads into the next, I'm assuming season worth of episodes.
Yeah.
But it is very self-contained. Like they have a plan and you see them, well, in the flashbacks, you see them come up with the plan and then you see them at least try to execute the plan. And obviously that goes awry, and that's going to lead into the next at least few episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good point. It is kind of a self-contained episode, which I actually kind of liked.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I miss having a character like the governor, like a big antagonist that they're kind of competing with.
Well, I don't know how far you are in the comic books, but I'm sure Negan is coming.
Yeah, and I saw earlier this week there was a casting call for Negan or something, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
I mean, it won't happen in this season, obviously.
Maybe more with the Wolves or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely something big coming.
Yep, cool.
All right, so our next segment, just moving right along, is plainly called Comics. Tyler and I are not great at coming up with segment titles, so we just plainly call this one Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of comics each week, and we like to spotlight one or two. So Tyler, what are you reading this week?
So I'm a week late on this one. I was waiting for my package of new release comics to come in, and it finally did. And this is part of the new Marvel wave. It's Invincible Iron Man #1. Just even picking up this comic was awesome. It has like a thick cover, and you can tell that it was kind of specially packaged. It's a big deal. And it's the launch of this new Iron Man title, who's obviously like the pinnacle of Marvel right now. So it was really cool just even taking it out of the sleeve and getting into it. And I wasn't too disappointed, actually. I didn't have high hopes for this comic just because I've never been a huge Iron Man in the comic book fan. Not so much the character, more just like his runs solo. I did really like Superior Iron Man though, where I talked about it on the podcast previously. It was an arc from earlier this year where he's the villain.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. I love that a lot. And Invincible Iron Man kind of changed my opinion on that a little bit. It was really entertaining. It really captures Tony Stark, incredibly well. There's this hilarious scene that is like one of my favorite moments from comics, lately, where he's on a date and she's talking about how Tony Stark was going to try to impress him. That's what her friends had told her. And he goes, if I wanted to impress you, I could just have Thor stop by. And when he says that, in the background, you see Lady Thor like come down from the sky. And, she's like, oh yeah, well, none of that's necessary. And then you see Lady Thor fly away. and that's like the whole part of it. And it was just really funny reading that and really obscure to see like a character like that pop in. And then there's an awesome cliffhanger with a character that I'm really excited to see in the Iron Man universe, and how it's a villain, and I'm really excited to see how this villain is going to interact with Iron Man. Things have obviously changed with this character, because his or her appearance is different. I don't want to spoil it, but
yeah,
it got me really intrigued in where this comic is going. So I definitely recommend Invincible Iron Man #1.
All right, cool, man. I, like you, I'm not a huge Iron Man fan, like you mentioned a little bit. Briefly, I think I'm more intrigued by Tony Stark than I am the actual character of Iron Man. So that, I mean, it sounds like it's a fun Tony Stark comic book.
Yeah.
I'm not really all that interested in Iron Man itself.
I mean, Iron Man doesn't show up until the last part of it, and why his part of the comic is redeemed is with the cliffhanger.
Okay, cool.
Which I won't spoil.
Yeah, obviously.
All right. So what are you reading this week?
I'm going to bring up two. They're kind of loosely tied together. Of course, talk about Secret Wars #6. I've talked about every issue of Secret Wars so far, and I think this was released 2 weeks ago, maybe last week. I don't remember. I get it from Midtown, so I'm always kind of like a week behind with them.
Yeah.
All right. So I complained a lot about #5. When that was released, just because it was really exposition heavy and it didn't really move the plot along, which is weird because there's only 8 issues of, well, there soon to be 9 issues. You would think that they wouldn't waste time, that they would continually move, but #5 was really kind of stagnant. And so I was happy when I was reading 6. There's a lot of moving parts, in issue 6. There's a lot less Doom. So if you're not a fan of what's going on with Battle World and Doom, you'll be happy to hear that there's a lot less of that in this book, and it's much more about the Marvel characters. Well, I mean, they're all Marvel characters, but the characters that have survived, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and I really like that. There's a few things that weren't great about this book, like there's a character, and for me at least, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like it was a new, like, villain character that's uprising against Doom called the Prophet. I've never heard of this character before. And and maybe it was just because it's just me, and maybe I'm not, the Marvel historian that I thought I was, but I've never heard of this character before. And they kind of introduce him and don't really explain his arc. And so it's just like they introduce him and assume that you know who he is. And I was a little lost there. And there's some Captain Marvel stuff in there that, doesn't really fit with what I know of Captain Marvel. So that was a little strange, but I really like it. And there's a bit of a cliffhanger with the Infinity Gauntlet and Black Panther.
That's cool.
So there's some really cool stuff with, Black Panther and Namor in it. And so I really liked it. It seems to be moving the plot along a lot better than #5 was. And I think I'm really looking forward to seeing the end of the run and just see where all that stuff is heading. And I'm hoping that it pays off. And there's a big cliffhanger with, Thanos and the Thing that I really appreciated. So I'm definitely looking forward to the last few issues of this miniseries.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. This was in my giant package of comics I received yesterday that I haven't really dug too much into except for Invincible Iron Man and a couple others. So I will look forward to getting through that because it sounds like it kind of picks things up a little bit better than 5 did.
Yeah. One other thing and I hate to keep bashing it because I did really enjoy this comic book. You mentioned the cover of Iron Man was really cool. This cover I was super excited about because it has like Thanos fighting like Marvel zombies on it. And there's almost very little Thanos in this book, and there's no zombies in the book. So that was kind of disappointing.
Have you noticed that with a lot of comics? I've noticed that especially over the last year, that the cover has absolutely nothing to do what happens inside. Like, I don't know if they're just like telling these cover artists just draw something cool with this character, and they haven't read the story or it hasn't been written or whatever. But it seems like especially, I don't know, DC as well. There's just not a huge link between the cover and what goes on inside the story. Yeah,
it was pretty disappointing. But I mean, all in all, it was a solid book, and it was definitely a step up as far as the plot's concerned with number 5.
All right, awesome.
So the next one I want to talk about is Doctor Strange #1, which kind of ties in with Secret Wars just because they're finally starting to relaunch Marvel, all these number ones. Like you talked about Iron Man. Doctor Strange is one that I've been really looking forward to because I'm getting psyched for the movie. And similar to Ant-Man, when they relaunched Ant-Man, the movie was about to come out and it really got me excited for the movie, even though the character is a lot different, not just a little different, but it's a lot different than it is in the comic book, but the tone is the same. And I'm hoping that the tone of the movie is a lot like this comic book because it's really fun. It's a number one, but it doesn't spend too much time kind of giving you exposition, which is great. It really just dives into, there's a big scene at the beginning where he's fighting, it's kind of hard to explain what he's fighting, but it's a really cool scene. The artwork's amazing. The colors that they use are really kind of cool. There's a particular scene where he's just like walking down the street and he's showing you what normal people are seeing and then what he sees. And just the color scheme is really cool. It kind of jumps off the panel. It's very cool. And then there's subtle humor in this book that I really appreciate. And the cliffhanger at the end is really cool. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I would suggest jumping on this train, before they get too far into it because I thoroughly enjoyed this book.
Awesome. This is another book that I have in my giant stack of comics that I just ordered. So I'm definitely looking forward to it as well because Doctor Strange is one of the Marvel characters I don't know a ton about.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be able to read this and brush up a little bit before the movie comes out next winter.
Yeah, the opening scene, like I talked about, it does give you a lot of good background. While he's fighting, he's kind of having this inner monologue and kind of explaining to you. So I thought it was kind of a fun way to do the kind of the origin story that you need because I feel like Marvel is aware that Doctor Strange is that character that nobody really knows a whole lot about. So I like that they're kind of introducing him before the movie comes out.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
All right. So the next segment, is pretty much Tyler's baby, even though he hates when I call it that. We just dubbed it Nerd News. Tyler compiles all the nerd news from the last week and we just discuss it. So Tyler, what do you got this week?
So, one of the bigger ones from this past week was it was confirmed by Variety that Marvel's in final negotiations with Mark Ruffalo for Thor to appear in, that's not right. For Hulk to appear in Thor Ragnarok, which is pretty interesting. I think that Marvel realizes that their Thor movies have kind of been the weaker of their standalone movies. And
for sure,
they're going to try to give it an injection of, adrenaline and to get the fan base a little bit more excited for it than they probably would be. So how do you do that? You put one of the fan favorite characters in the story and that would be the Hulk.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Like I said, like you said, it's kind of I wouldn't necessarily deem it a gimmick because I think they'll find an interesting way to weave him into the story. It's just one of the things that I really liked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is it seems like they have this plan.
Yeah.
Years ahead of time. They know what's happening. Well, if they're just now getting around to getting the Hulk involved in a Thor storyline, it just kind of leads me to believe that they don't necessarily, maybe they just have the blueprint, but they don't necessarily know exactly, they certainly don't have the script. If they're now just introducing characters into the story, they obviously don't have the script, but I don't know. It'll be fun. I hope it's not just like a little cameo. I hope that he's really involved in the story.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they're going to explain that the character gets there.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that there's Planet Hulk and it won't be Hulk's first time ever in space or in that kind of atmosphere. Like that doesn't bother me. Last time we saw him obviously was him flying away on the Quinjet from Avengers Age of Ultron. So how do you go from that to Asgard or wherever this is going to take place?
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to see for sure. But it's Marvel. They'll find a way to weave it all together.
Yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for Hulk. I mean, he's great. And I mean, he's definitely a fan favorite. So it got me excited for Thor. I mean, I honestly, I love Marvel and I love the cinematic universe, but Thor is kind of really dull for me. I don't really get all of that excited for the new Thor movies. So I'm definitely looking forward to this.
Oh, for sure. So this next one, it was confirmed that Kingsman 2 is going to start filming in April. And what was kind of funny about this is I guess they had a deal with, what's the actor's name, main actor from Kingsman, not Colin Firth, the kid.
Taron Egerton?
Yes. Yeah, Taron Egerton was supposed to be starring in this other movie for the studio, like called Robin Hood Begins or something along those lines. It sounds like complete horseshit. And the studio was basically like, oh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to push Kingsman 2 up. So that pushed that Robin Hood movie back. So maybe if we're lucky, they'll scrap that movie because he was so great in Kingsman. I would hate to see like his next big thing be Robin Hood Begins. Like, is that really what we need?
Yeah, well, because Kingsman was his first movie. Like, I had never seen him before, but I've watched all the special features, and he basically says, like, he had done some commercials or whatever, but this was one of the first movies he even auditioned for.
Wow.
So, yeah, Robin Hood, I'm just not that interested in the story. So I'm kind of glad that they're pushing that back in. Like you said, hopefully it just gets scrapped, because I'd hate for his follow-up, like you said, to be just some shitty movie and everybody kind of just forgets how great he was in Kingsman.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Robin Hood mythos, but we've seen it a trillion times, and in my opinion, it's never been done great.
Except for the animated one.
Yeah, well, except for the animated. Yeah. I mean, that is Robin Hood, and I don't know. I don't need to see Taron Egerton take a shot at it. But of course, he was probably at the point in his career where he's like, I just did a big movie. Like, yeah, I want to keep working like this.
Oh yeah, for sure. You don't necessarily blame him so much as you blame, and I mean, we don't know if this movie is bad or not, but
yeah,
the fact that the studio is willing to push it back doesn't necessarily give me that high of expectations for it.
Oh, for sure. All right. So rumor has it that Black Panther has found its director, and it's going to be Ryan.
Finally.
Ryan, I know it seems like every week is a different person we're thinking it's going to be. Ryan Coogler, who directed Fruitvale Station and is directing Creed, which comes out in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really liked Fruitvale Station. I thought that was great. I'll never watch it again because it's just it's such a depressing movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was well done. It was a good story. I mean, I'm excited. I don't know how Creed is going to be. I think that they've kind of milked all the life they can out of the Rocky storyline. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm looking forward to it, but I'll see Creed and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If Fruitvale Station is anything to base his skill on, he'd be great at bringing story to the Black Panther. And then,
for sure.
I mean, we'll see how he does with the bigger budget with Creed, but I think that it looks like it's going to be fine. I don't know. It's not going to be a train wreck. I wouldn't imagine so.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Andy Serkis.
What's he in? Is he in Creed?
No, he's going to be in Black Panther, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. I didn't put that together. I would assume as well.
I'm looking forward to him having a bigger role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't imagine him not being the villain in Black Panther.
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of lame to introduce him in Age of Ultron and explain how he gets the claw and then him not show up. So yeah, I didn't put that together for some reason. All right. So I know you're going to be thrilled about this one. They're looking at doing another Die Hard movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Please just stop.
Saw that. And not only is it another Die Hard movie, but it's being referred to as Die Hard Year One, with a series of flashbacks to John McClane before the original Die Hard, played by a younger actor. But you still got to have Bruce Willis in it, so he'll be playing, of course, present day John McClane. Yeah,
it sounds super dumb.
Yeah.
And the last one was one of the worst movies I'd seen. Whenever, I think it was 2014 is when it came out. No, it wasn't 2014. It was probably 2013. It was one of the worst movies I'd seen that year. It was really bad, which is depressing because Live Free and Die Hard was really great. I loved it. It kind of, brought a shot to that
might
franchise.
Be like the silver lining for you because they're trying to get Lynn Wiseman, who directed that movie, back to direct this one. But at this point, like, you've just beat the dead horse, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's done. All right. Last one. So we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yep.
Turns out that was completely on point, and it's going to be released in 2020 after King Kong Skull Island. It opens in 2017, and then Godzilla 2 comes in 2018. So each of them get another single outing, and then they're going to fight each other.
Yeah. So it's not going, and we may have had this conversation before. Is Skull Island going to be a prequel to the Jack Black one, or is it just not the same thing?
It's not connected to the Jack Black one. It's supposed to be a prequel to the King Kong story, which leaves me wondering, is it going to be present day? Is that how they're going to explain King Kong versus Godzilla? I don't know. I imagine that it's going to kind of stray more from being a prequel to like a prequel / remake.
Since it's moved studios, they probably reworked the script a little bit.
This will be the only King Kong movie before King Kong versus Godzilla, so I can't imagine that it doesn't end with King Kong in New York or something, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Of course, King Kong is always killed, and in this one, he obviously can't be. So I don't know, man. We'll see. They're definitely just kind of. It seems like they're just kind of pushing buttons over there, like seeing what works and what doesn't.
I don't know. It just it seems like those two monsters seemed, for me at least, it'll be a fun movie. I mean, obviously, it depends on how well received Godzilla 2 and Skull Island are, but it seems silly, but it seems like something that I would hate, but for some reason, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. Again, I'll wait and see how those other two movies are, but I'm looking forward to it.
I wouldn't say I'm looking forward to it, but I mean, I'm going to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. That is all I have for nerd news.
All right, man. So the next segment is just, we've dubbed it our main topic just because it changes from week to week. This week we're in the midst of Shocktober, so we thought it would be appropriate. Del Toro just released his gothic horror film Crimson Peak, so we felt it was appropriate to review it. So we're going to do a review of Crimson Peak. First off, we always start our reviews by me giving a synopsis. So Crimson Peak is about a girl trying to run from ghosts of her past and a recent family tragedy. Edith escapes her hometown with a man she doesn't really know to a house that has ghosts of its own.
Not bad, man. Not bad.
Thank you. I wrote that this morning. So we start off each review by talking about our broad strokes. So Tyler, what is your general feeling after seeing this movie? You just saw it, actually. Yeah, I think we should state that. Yeah.
Like I got out of the movie theater and came over here to record the podcast.
Yeah. So. I saw it a couple of days ago. So I've had a couple of days to digest it. Tyler, this is really fresh on his mind.
Yeah. Like I'm still at the point where I could regurgitate it if need be. So I thought this movie was very good looking, as is most Guillermo del Toro movies.
For sure.
But overall, it was very disappointing.
Oh, really?
I was very much looking forward to this movie. It's been a while since we got a Guillermo del Toro movie. I think Pacific Rim, right?
Yeah.
And that was disappointing as well, in a way. So I was excited to see him return to horror and put out like a haunted house movie, because there's not been a great haunted house movie in a while. I was a little bit disappointed that it was a period piece when I first heard about it, but I was able to put that aside and still have a lot of excitement for it. And like I said, just pretty disappointed because of some things we'll get to later in the review. It was actually one of the bigger letdowns for me of the year. Like,
oh, really?
Like Fantastic Four was terrible, but I knew going into Fantastic Four it was going to be terrible because of some of the buzz around it. I didn't have any idea how this was doing with critics. I didn't read any reviews. I just knew that it was Guillermo del Toro, like going back to his roots and, doing what he does best, a haunted house movie, with ghosts and creatures that he's great at. And it just didn't hit right for me. So
I wouldn't necessarily say that I was disappointed. I'm a Del Toro fan as you are as well, Tyler. So I have to come out and say that I can't be objective. I really just love his style. I'm a fan of his. So every time he puts out a movie, I go into the movie wanting to love it. I wanted to really love Pacific Rim. We had talked prior that was the movie when it was released. It was released during the summer. That was the summer movie that I was really looking forward to. And I would say that I was disappointed because it wasn't what I wanted it to be, but I didn't think it was a bad movie. I don't think that this is a bad movie. It isn't what I wanted it to be. It's not necessarily a horror movie. It's not really all that scary, which is disappointing, but I still think that it's a good movie. It has good performances. The set pieces are beautiful. It's just beautifully done. I love how movies, not just Del Toro movies, but movies itself, when it makes the environment a character. And I think that the house is a great character. Now, it doesn't necessarily live up to the potential of what I thought it was going to be going into the movie, but I loved how this house had real character, and he brought it to life just the way he filmed it, and certain just like set pieces and the color. And it was just such well done. The story is what let me down. The story was just very, very typical and just very cliche, and I'll dive into it in a little bit more detail here in a moment, but that's what let me down with this movie. Not the acting, not the set pieces, not the direction. It was the writing that let me down, which ultimately he wrote the movie as well. Him and his writing partner, which I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he is to blame somewhat for how bad not bad, because I think I liked this movie much more than you did, but it was just the story really let this movie down.
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of stuff you said there. So maybe I came off a bit too harsh, because this wasn't a train wreck of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense from point A to point B.
Yeah.
It is beautiful, like I said. It's just, for me, it was disappointing to the expectations I had for it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't what I expected, and that let me down, and that's definitely going to impact my opinion of it and the score I end up giving it when we're all said and done with this review.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and dive right into the story. Like I said, it's the worst part of this movie. It's just, for me, it's the easiest. When I say that I'm a Del Toro fan and I go into his movies wanting to love it, I also go into it expecting a lot. And just, for me, this was the easiest thing that you could do. The story was it was the lowest hanging fruit for me. Every turn in this movie was exactly what I thought was going to happen. Because they even, very early in the movie, they tease something. Something is revealed about a character to other characters in the movie. And they teased it throughout the movie. And then you finally figure out what it was. And it was just like, yep, I could have guessed that. Like, it was so easy. Every turn in this movie, I felt like he thought was going to really shock the audience. And it just didn't, because it was just the lowest hanging fruit for me.
Oh yeah. Nothing in this movie surprised me. Like you said, there were things that were, I'm sure when they wrote it and they were making it, they're like, oh, this twist or this turn, the audience won't see coming. And it was all very, just like you said, cliche. It was all very predictable. I think that, unfortunately, they focused on substance over story in this movie, because it was beautiful. Everything was gorgeous. The set pieces were amazing. The clay coming up from the house was like such a big part of this movie, and it made things really eerie. But unfortunately, the story didn't match all the effort they put into the feel of it. And while I was sitting there watching it, it reminded me of my relationship with American Horror Story.
Oh, really?
So, especially in the more recent seasons of that show, it's about the feel of, and the aura, and it's not about putting together good stories throughout a season. And that's how I felt with this movie. It's about the feel of it and the look of it and being very, very Del Toro. And then the story just is a big letdown.
Yeah. And for me, I'll try to be as vague as possible because I don't want to spoil anything. But for me, it was billed as this ghost story. And the ghosts at a certain point in this movie aren't important. Yeah. There's a turn in this movie that makes the ghosts irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it's very disappointing. I like their take on ghosts. And this might be too much of a spoiler. I hope not. I like that when the ghosts aren't necessarily the bad guys.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a unique turn because we've seen it in other movies, but I liked it. It was a breath of fresh air, but there's a particular turn in the movie where the ghosts no longer matter. You're no longer scared of them.
I like that as well, but I was never under the impression from this first time you see a ghost in this movie that the ghost is going to be the bad guy.
Oh, really?
Like I was never convinced that like she's in danger from these ghosts.
I just felt like with the trailers, and maybe it was just mismarketed, but it just seemed like the house was the bad guy. And like I said, I think they did a good job of kind of creating the house as an extra character, but it just never really lived up to the potential. And maybe that's just because the trailers were kind of marketed weird, but it just seemed like she was trying to survive living in this house, and it wasn't necessarily the house that she had to fear. And that might be giving a little bit too much away.
Well, I mean, at the beginning, it's established that Edith is a writer and she likes putting ghosts in her stories.
Yeah.
And her argument when people tell her not to do that is that it's not a ghost story.
Yeah.
The ghosts are there as a character or as a set piece.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is with this movie.
Sure.
And it was very foreshadowing, and that's kind of the impression I got from it.
That was a little heavy-handed as well.
Oh, yes. Like, it wasn't like, I feel like I'm a Sherlock for figuring that out. I feel like at the beginning of the movie, they're telling me the ghosts are just here as a set piece.
Yeah.
The ghosts are not the main part of this movie, and then they're not.
Speaking of Sherlock, how heavy-handed was, what's his name? Charlie
Hunnam?
Yeah. His character liking Sherlock Holmes, and then he's a doctor, but then he becomes a detective. It was really, they planted a lot of stuff hard in this movie.
I know, well, we'll get into performances in a second. I know a lot of people love Sons of Anarchy, but goddamn, Charlie Hunnam is not good.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's just go ahead and get right into performances. I felt like I was writing my notes and I put everyone was great. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, he wasn't good, so I had to scratch out everyone. Most people were great in this film, except for him. I'm not a fan. I don't think he's not necessarily a bad actor. He's just, I don't know.
He's just there. He can read lines really well.
Yeah, exactly. He's just kind of bland for me.
100%.
But I think everybody else was great. Jessica Chastain was fantastic. You aren't supposed to like her character, and you don't. You definitely are creeped out by her. Her and Tom Hiddleston definitely have good chemistry, even though it's kind of a weird chemistry, which again, you're not supposed to like. Well, you're supposed to like Tom Hiddleston for a part of this movie, for a stretch of it, but
where you see his ass? I was like, that's Loki's butt.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like it took me back a little bit. I was just like, oh God.
What, your boner?
Yeah, my boner. When it hit me in the face because I have a huge dick.
All right, off the rails.
And that was your fault. That was your fault.
Oh, for sure. I take full responsibility for that dick joke.
No, but I mean, everybody kind of brought their A game. But like I said, the story was kind of lacking. They weren't given the material that I think the performances deserved.
All right, so I disagree with you. I thought that nothing in it was terrible, but nothing stood out to me. I thought Jessica Chastain kind of phoned it in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I completely disagree.
Maybe it's because I saw The Martian last weekend and she was just phenomenal in it, and then going to see this movie, and it just, I don't know. I don't think that she was bad, but she didn't do anything out, like she didn't take any chances. And then I really don't like Maya Wachowski, or however you say her last name.
I thought she was pretty good in this one.
It's Wazikowski. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not gonna try, and I'm not going to.
I don't know what it is. I just didn't really feel sorry for her character. And I don't know.
It is hard to feel sorry for her character just because why would you just you barely know this person? But it's, like you mentioned, it is a period piece and it's a long time ago. So things were different. Back then you didn't really necessarily date for very long. Yeah. It was just like you went on a few dates and you were kind of spoken for.
Yeah. And that's fine. I don't know. The way that she portrayed the character didn't have my buy-in. Like, I like Tom Hiddleston. I thought he did fine. Charlie Hunnam wasn't great. I really liked Jim Beaver, who played, Edith's dad.
Yeah, he was great.
I thought he was great. So there's that. But I don't know. The performances just didn't hit for me like I thought they would.
There was a lot.
Like, Jessica Chastain might be my favorite actress right now. Like,
oh, really?
She's doing some really great films, and she's playing a lot of strong female characters. And then in this movie, she's just kind of she's just there. And obviously her character has some twists and turns towards the end. And I think that's probably the best part of her performance, is the performance at the end where things kind of hit the fan. But leading up to that, whatever.
I felt like there was a sinister quality to her performance, and obviously there's a sinister quality to her character. So I just like that. From the get-go, you kind of don't really trust her, and she's very, very creepy. So I appreciated that. So I disagree with you.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
So the horror aspect of this movie, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, it's lacking. And I think that's more of marketing than anything else. Like I mentioned, it just, for me, it seemed like a return to form that he was doing, Del Toro was doing a horror film. And this is not that. This is more like a gothic romance. Like, it's much more like a love triangle sort of thing. And I don't know. I was disappointed in that aspect. I'm still counting it for Shocktober.
Yeah.
Because there are ghosts in this movie. But like I said, it takes a turn where the ghosts no longer become relevant. And that was disappointing to me. The ghosts look great.
Yeah,
they're very creepy. There was a particular scene at the very beginning that kind of reminded me of the Babadook, where that hand comes over and grabs her. And just the hand reminded me of it's very similar to the Babadook. So I appreciated that. It does have its moments where it's scary or kind of creepy, but like I said, it gets to a point where there's a particular turn in the film that it just takes the weight away from it. Not that I was really uneasy watching this film, but there's a particular spot in the movie where I was just like, okay, now I can relax a little bit, because it kind of changes the tone of the movie. And it was just kind of disappointing. The horror aspect just really wasn't there in this movie.
Oh, for sure. I 100% agree. I was never scared watching this movie. I like you said, the ghosts look fantastic, and Guillermo del Toro is really good at that. And I would expect no less at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
But they didn't matter.
About once the third act gets there, you no longer, not necessarily you don't care about the ghosts. It's just that they're no longer relevant, and you can kind of relax a little bit. If that aspect of the movie was scaring you, you can kind of relax at that moment, because there's really not a whole lot going on. I mean, there's a lot going on, but as far as the ghosts are concerned, it's really not that big of a deal at that point. So
if she would have just taken the ghost's advice at the beginning of the movie,
yeah, that was
like we could have probably ended things a lot quicker.
Yeah, that was one thing that, and I'm glad you brought it up, that kind of bothered me. That scene was really creepy at the very beginning with the little girl and her mom. That was super creepy. But she knew about the clay. She knew the color of the clay is definitely a crimson color, and obviously her mom has her mom's ghost or whatever.
Well, when she finds out what Crimson Peak is, like, it's not too late. Like, she could still run away and be like, shit, man, I remember like that ghost told me twice.
Yeah. She even says in some narration, by the time I figured out what that was, the meaning of that, it was too late. No, it wasn't. The storm hadn't come. Like, that was the big thing that kept them in the house. It hadn't come yet.
No.
She could have easily called the town or whatever, however you do it in the 1800s. And she could have gotten out of there easily.
Oh, for sure.
But she hadn't signed the papers yet, and it wasn't too late. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that did kind of bother me a little bit.
Oh, sure.
So I want to talk a little bit before we get to the star rating, just how, and we've touched on this a little bit, how just beautifully the film was put together. The set pieces were great. I love the costumes. Everybody else kind of had very bland costumes, but I really loved how Jessica Chastain's character, she was wearing dark colors, but in contrast to everybody else's costumes and attire, it kind of brought color to the screen. I really appreciated that, and just the way it was filmed, just the sound mixing was great. There's a couple of scenes where a character's carrying a candlelight or just walking with candlelight, and every time she moves it, you can hear the flames kind of whisper. Yeah. And so everything is just so delicately made in this film that it was very disappointing to me that the story just didn't live up to that.
Style over story.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything about it was fantastic except for this part that matters the most to me.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain scenes where you can kind of hear the floors creaking, and that, for me, that's good horror films, and like we said, this is not really a horror film, but good horror films, that's what you need. You need those little things to kind of build up the tension and kind of create this awesome atmosphere. And it had everything for it, just not the story.
Yep. 100%.
So that being said, what'd you ultimately give it as far as star rating?
2.5.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was close to giving it a 3. But the more we went through the review and talked about some of the stuff I disliked about it, I think I'm going to do a 2.5. If I ever watch it again, it only has the possibility of going up since now I know what it is.
Yeah.
But, gut reaction seeing it 2 hours ago, it's going to be a 2.5 for now.
Oh, really? So it sounds like I liked it a lot more than you did because I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Oh, wow.
That's like I said, it's hard for me to be objective with him, but I just like the nuances of the film. I can ignore some of the blatant, just kind of cliche motivations and plot lines because I did really like the performances and just everything was so meticulously put together except for the story. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. If it had been a better story and had been more of a horror story, I think it probably would have been in the running for one of my favorite movies because, like I said, I have such a bias towards his work.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's why I was so let down is because this was like the pinnacle of Shocktober for me.
For sure.
I love every Shocktober. There's typically a big horror movie that kind of is the main event in a way.
Sure.
You're going to go see and really look forward to. And this was it for me and just didn't live up to it. So
yeah, that 3.5 may or may not go down. I will definitely be getting it on Blu-ray. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. And
the sad thing is I will also probably get it on Blu-ray.
Well, I mean, I like all of his other movies.
Yeah.
At least the ones that I've seen.
And despite this, I still want to, I think Guillermo del Toro's extremely talented and extremely visionary and I want to support his work. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. So you ready to move on?
Yes.
All right. So as always, we end each episode with a nerd favorite where we ask each other what our favorite blank is. Usually it ties to something we talked about earlier in the episode. If we do a review, typically it ties to that. So that being said, Pat, I'm going to ask you what your favorite Guillermo del Toro movie is.
All right.
So I'm going to go first, give you time to think, and say that my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie is Pan's Labyrinth. This was a movie that I saw during my movie renaissance, I guess, in late high school, early college. And I was just very blown away by it. Just the style of it, like we mentioned with Crimson Peak, all of that is there. It's such a beautiful movie. And then the story in that movie is fantastic as well. I love that it's like a fantasy for adults. So yeah. It's a fantasy movie, but it's definitely not for kids. And the creatures in it are definitely not for kids. And the story is obviously not for kids, but it's still a rated R fantasy movie, which kind of hits home for me. So that being said, Pan's Labyrinth, my favorite Guillermo del Toro film. I will have to say I own Kronos and The Devil's Backbone on Blu-ray, and I have not watched them yet. So I could easily watch those and be just as easily blown away, and one of those movies take the spot. I do plan on watching those by the end of Shocktober.
Yeah, I kind of feel almost like a phony because we keep talking about how we're big Del Toro fans, but neither one of us have kind of seen his indie, like the snobby filmmaker is always like, well, those are his best works, are Kronos and Devil's Backbone. And it's kind of embarrassing for me as a hipster movie fan to not have seen either one of those.
Yeah. Especially since I own them. It's like, I could watch them
for shame
at any time and I just haven't. So yeah, it's disappointing for me as well.
But for me, it's Pan's is kind of the obvious choice. And for the sake of conversation, I'll go ahead and pick some other movie. I actually forgot that he did Blade 2 for a while there. And I recently, I was just kind of looking over Netflix trying to find a good Shocktober movie. And I was really in the mood to see a good vampire movie. And so I was just like Googling good vampire movies and Blade 2 kept popping up. And I remember I own all three of them. I remember Blade 2 being the better of the three. And so I was like, you know what? Why not? I haven't seen those movies in a while. So I popped in Blade 2 and then it reminded me that was a Del Toro movie. And so I was watching it and I was like, God damn, this is a good movie. Like other than Pan's, that's probably my favorite, Del Toro movie. I love how it's kind of like a zombie movie. Because they're getting infected. I mean, it's basically a zombie vampire movie. And I love the dynamic that Blade now has to train and like lead the blood pack who were created to hunt him. So I think I like that, aspect of the movie. And it's just a fun movie.
Oh, for sure. It's funny. I haven't seen that movie in forever. That was like, I remember when that movie came out, I was still a kid because it came out in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
And I really wanted to see it. And my dad and I kept planning on going to see it. And it would have been like my first rated R movie. And one of my cousins was going to go. It was going to be like this big thing. And we just never did. And I was so disappointed to have never seen it. And then I think I saw it in high school or something. And it is fantastic. It's definitely the best of the 3 Blade movies.
Yeah. Funny story that you brought that up. Blade, the first Blade, one of the worst movie going experiences I've ever had. I saw it when it first came out, obviously, because it was in the theater. So I was like a little kid. I don't remember when that movie came out. But again, we've talked about this before. My parents didn't really care about stuff like that. And I remember, and maybe it was just because I was really little, but the theater was just too fucking loud.
Really?
Like the movie, the volume of the theater was just, I just remember watching the movie with my fingers in my ears. Like it was way too fucking loud. And it was probably just because I was a little punk bitch kid that couldn't handle it, but it was just really fucking loud. And I remember getting the movie later on VHS and watching it. I'm like, this is a really cool movie. Too bad it was really fucking loud in the theater and I never really got to appreciate it. But I always just remember Blade being the movie that I watched and it just being way too fucking loud. But I really like Blade 2. And so that would be kind of my second favorite Del Toro movie. I'd like to mention that Mimic is kind of an underrated movie. It's a fun, like B-rated horror movie. And I really appreciate that. I watched it a lot as a kid and I just recently rewatched it last October and it's just a fun movie. So, I'll kind of throw that as an honorable mention as well. I really like Mimic as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I almost did favorite Guillermo del Toro movie that did not get made. There's so many of them. And then you go to his IMDb page and under upcoming projects, there's 11.
Oh, really?
I don't know what of those will ever get made. Like one of them's Frankenstein. And obviously I don't think that'll get made. They're making a new Frankenstein movie that comes out in November. But, there's so many things that he's been attached to over the years. He just seems like a guy that's so passionate about things that he talks more than other people in the industry do about things that he wants to do. And then when they don't come to fruition, we get disappointed. So.
Yeah, it seems like in interviews, he seems like a good interview because he'll just talk about anything. And once he talks about it, it becomes its own story. And so then it gets its own IMDb page. And it just seems like a lot of the things that he say it's not realistic that it's ever going to get made, but because he mentioned it one time in an interview, now it's a thing. And then it becomes this failed project when ultimately it probably was the likelihood of it ever getting made.
Yeah. One of the films he was attached to that I was really excited for was, we talked about it before, and cue the Eddie Murphy joke, but, he was going to do a new Haunted Mansion movie for Disney. And they had even announced it at D23 in like 2010. And they had like a voiceover done by Ian McShane, the guy who played Blackbeard in On Stranger Tides. And I was really excited for that. So you would think something like that had like this official announcement would have come to fruition. And, Ryan Gosling was in talks to star in it and it just never came to be. So I was pretty disappointed with that. But, I don't know. He seems like he would be like the best guy to hang out with.
Oh yeah,
Have you ever like seen his, house?
No.
He was talking about it on Jimmy Kimmel a couple weeks ago. He referred to it as like this house he built to be his man cave because he couldn't fit all of his stuff in his actual house. And it's just like tons of props and horror movie memorabilia. And like the cops got called because somebody thought they saw a dead body in it. And,
I think I heard about that.
Yeah. And when they came and knocked on the door, he got it. And all the police came and he gave him a tour of it. And he seems like he'd just be like the best guy to sit down and watch a movie with.
He was a pretty cool Nerdist episode.
I need to look that up. I don't think I've heard it.
Yeah. He talks a lot about The Strain, which I'm a huge fan of. Like if this question was worded a little bit differently, like favorite Del Toro project.
Yeah.
With the books included, it'd probably be The Strain because I think you would still pick Pans. So obviously for sake of conversation, I would have to pick something else. It would probably be The Strain because I really dig that with the added bonus of the books have been really great. I've read the first one and I'm about 3/4 of the way through the second one. I'm really enjoying them.
Awesome. So next week, are we still reviewing Goosebumps?
Yes.
I'm really actually looking forward to that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like I was standing
it's getting pretty good reviews, actually.
I saw that it was getting good reviews, and I was standing in line for tickets today for Crimson Peak, and there was a standee for Goosebumps, and it looks just like a lot of fun, and it's going to bring back some childhood stuff from like the Goosebumps TV show and the books, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Are you going to count that for Shocktober?
100%.
Yeah, I will too, because I mean, it's a kid's horror movie, but it's still a horror movie.
So, okay, then for sake of conversation, in years past, I haven't watched it this year yet. I've counted Hocus Pocus. Like that is
that's probably the line for me.
That's like 100% a Halloween movie though, and I think that's where you and I differentiate.
I mean, the spirit of it, I suppose.
Yeah. What about Nightmare Before Christmas?
No.
There's a song in it fucking called "This Is Halloween."
It's a Christmas movie.
It's half and half.
No, it's 60-40. It's a Christmas movie.
All right. I'll give you
and I feel like the 60-40 is pretty generous. It's probably more like 70-30.
I'll give you that one.
But yeah, maybe Hocus Pocus is probably the line for me.
I love Hocus Pocus. That movie's fucking awesome.
It's all right. I haven't seen it in a long time. But,
you need to watch it, man. It's good.
But I've counted some weird movies before, so.
Like anything off the top of your head?
I think a couple of years ago I counted Paranorman, which is a zombie movie, but it's an animated movie and it's just kind of fun. So
I'd count it.
Yeah.
Of course, it seems like I'm a lot more loosey-goosey with my rules than you are.
I think I counted The Grey a couple of years ago, which is probably, that was a kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I've been pretty good this Shocktober. I counted last night as just a general, just one thing.
That's what I'm going to count.
And so I think I've hit 20 or 21 movies that I've watched so far, and it's only the
17th.
Yeah, right? 17th of October. So I'm going pretty strong. I'm having a pretty good Shocktober. So I've been really enjoying it. So hopefully it doesn't feel like a chore as it has in the last couple of days. I've been really of October. The last couple of Shocktobers have been kind of hard for me to. Yeah. But I've kind of tried to mix it up. So with different kind of genres of horror, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right. So that'll be it for this episode. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+, check out the new YouTube page, email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. We're on it. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. I think that's about it.
Awesome, man.
For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys later.